What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. Fair warning, I'm full of car and driving analogies, and I have at least like 5 more of car analogies and parallels to real life recorded on voice notes as I drive, but I won't exhaust them all here. They all cover different angles of different topics, so I won't go into all of them. But today is no different. It is about cars. And I want to share some thoughts I had while switching gears. Now, before I go into my analogies, let me briefly, I don't think it's going to be brief because it can get detailed, but let me briefly state, from my limited understanding of cars, how gears work in a car and why cars have them. And maybe in your own head, you can hear the analogies while I describe the inner workings of a car. Now, I drive a manual transmission, so I literally choose the gear I'm in. And more on that later. But this is also happening by itself in an automatic car. The car itself is deciding of what gear to be in by how much gas and pedal you press and how quickly you press them. In a manual, this is your job to figure out, matching the gear according to the drive that you want. Each gear is described by using the adjective tall or short, which is really just how big the rounded gear is, how much the diameter is. Not different from the mountain bicycles that we were used to, that we rode as kids. The larger the diameter, it's considered taller the gear. The smaller the diameter of the gear, the shorter it is considered. So now imagine what actually is happening to your car when it displays RPM, revolutions per minute. Imagine the chain on your mountain bike being in really low gear, like first gear. The cycling becomes much easier. Your legs are turning fast as possible, just like your car is in a higher RPM, really fast in first gear. But while the RPMs are high, meaning the amount of energy the engine is using to turn the chain is higher, very little of that power is actually going to the wheels. So like in your bicycle, for every turn of your legs all the way around, you are getting just a slight bit of a push to the bike, just a little bit. Just a little bit of your legs going around and around is connected to the tires. Compare that now with taller gears and how that titrates, how that graduates up in difficulty. Or how now the taller gear can revolve a little bit less but be more connected to the wheel, and what that results in is each turn of your leg all the way around actually moves the wheel a little bit more. In second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth gears, each gear is getting bigger sequentially in size in a car. And I think my mountain bike had like 20 gears, so somewhere in there all of this is happening, just the ratios are much smaller and how the gears are getting bigger. And so as they get sequentially bigger in size, it means the chain around it now doesn't need to turn as fast, because going around it means going around a bigger round, meaning it takes more time to go fully around that bigger diameter. You get less revolutions per minute out of it because the chain goes all the way around a bigger diameter. It takes a little bit longer. But now each pedal now of the bike feels harder and harder in the taller and taller gears. But now for each time around that higher gear that is taking longer, you are getting much more force added to the wheel. And now, is that what you want? Maybe. Because it's not really about what's better or worse. It's about what conditions you are in. Going up a hill, maybe you're exhausted. And the idea of being in a tall, higher gear, having to push for each inch and having each inch of your push be completely attached to the wheel, almost like every revolution of the leg is directly matched with the amount of power the wheel gets going uphill, unless you have crazy quads or insane endurance, you're gonna tire out. So you might choose to be in a lower gear, make the actual revolutions of your legs much more easier to do. So now you're gonna go around and around, and then just be satisfied with the fact that you're gonna go much slower up the hill, because yes, you have made your job a little bit easier. You're gonna go around and around a lot more, and it's not gonna be as hard because you drop the gears, but still your wheel isn't going to turn as much. So you're just going to go slower up the hill. But at least you've traded your power requirement for endurance by having to cycle more now, by dropping it in gear, and also have created distance from your power output effort to the actual power the wheel gets. This is not too dissimilar in a car. When you are starting off from a dead stop, if you went straight to the highest, tallest gear, your car would what they call lug. It would struggle. Because to be at that gear, the car requires to already be going at a certain speed. So to start off, you want to be in first gear because it is the shortest gear. It's also the quickest revving because it's the smallest, so the chain can go around it really, really fast. And one that goes up in revolutions per minute, the fastest. So you might get to 10 miles an hour in first gear, but your car will be revving like it's 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 RPMs. And the engine will sound like it's roaring when it's that high. And then you graduate up, matching the gear with a desired speed. Second gear gets you comfortably from 5 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour before the engine is roaring again and asking to be taken into the next gear if your intent is to continue to increase speed. And then third gear will comfortably take you from 25 to 45 before it starts roaring. Fourth from 45 to 65, again, roaring at the end of this margin. Fifth will be your powerful, still responsive gas pedal that can keep you from 55 to 75. But anytime during that time at highway speeds where you are normally in fifth gear, if your goal is to conserve gas or not accelerate hard because you're just going to cruise, you can easily go to the highest gear, which is sixth in my car, and that's the tallest of them all. And at this gear, the sixth gear, this will bring the RPMs very low, around 2,500 to 3,000 to 4,000 at speeds of anywhere from 60 to 80. And this means the engine doesn't have to burn as much gas, it doesn't have to use itself as much, and have to work as hard because it has the closest connection at that speed to the wheels and for very little bit of revolution at that engine. It gives it just as much force to the wheels to maintain that highway speed because it's a really, really tall gear. And so now that I have given you some of that background, there already is within it a lot of things to draw upon. And I'm going to do them haphazardly as it comes to me. But I hope that you were able to see some things that maybe I don't even point out. One thing that stuck out to me is that each gear is its own experience and has its own purpose. No matter how fast you're trying to go or how slow you're trying to be or where you're trying to get to, each gear will be required. All these ranges of gears that I told you about, the speeds, are very subjective to when you have a desired result in mind. Meaning, if I'm going 50 miles an hour and it's around a turn, I might actually want to be in third gear, even though normally you would be in fifth, while revving really high in third gear, because that high bit of revolution gives me more power and responsiveness to the gas pedal. To keep it going that high, I have to continue to hit the gas pedal. And if you've ever driven a car fast or seen any car racing, you know that you have the most control over your car while you are accelerating, while you have your foot on the pedal, because the tires are gripping the road. So even if you have to slow down for a turn, you slow down into the turn, into the apex, into the most peak of that turn, but then you accelerate out. You hit the gas because it gives you the most traction and control. So your third gear at 50 miles an hour will be revving high, but will allow you to keep your foot on the gas pedal and maintain that speed. Or if you don't keep your foot on the gas pedal, in third gear at 50 miles an hour, if you just slightly let off of it, the car will start engine braking and slow you down because it's going to try to get back to what is more natural for third gear to be in. And if you did the same turn in fifth gear, you will be revving so low, or in a normal range for fifth gear where the gas isn't really need to be pressed aggressively, because 50 miles an hour is a normal range for fifth gear. So the car in a turn won't feel as in control, and you will feel less secure and feel like you're being pushed to one side because of the G-forces. Because to grip the road more, you would need to be revving a little bit higher and your foot on the gas, because your tires are going much faster than the engine is going. And it has much less of a requirement for responsiveness and control. And that's not appropriate around the turn. All that detail is only for enthusiasts or geeks like me, but the point is still the same. Each gear has its own feeling, its own purpose, and one isn't better than the other. Each one is required for its designated speed, and other ones are more appropriate when the conditions match. If you're turning, or it's raining, or snowing, you will still want to be in a lower gear for higher traction. So it's all about the scenario and the circumstance that you're trying to match it with. And even without the scenarios, each gear still has its own feeling and experience, just in the feeling of it itself. When I first got my car, coming from a country where most people drive manual transmissions and they don't have a choice, and I had the choice to get an automatic in this country, and I was encouraged by my family, almost made fun by my family for wanting to get a stick shift car. My father said, "You're going to get so tired, you'll be down the road halfway down the block and you'll have to shift gears like 4 times. And yes, it is more work. But reflecting on this the other day, I realized why I never got tired of driving stick. It's because of this literal fact that each gear is its own experience. Every red light, I can choose to draw out each gear, rev it up as high as I want, depending on how aggressive or how much fun I want to have. I can drive completely docile, like a grandpa, and you won't even feel the gear changes like it's an automatic car. Or I can rev each gear up really high and then switch, and then you will feel that slight bit of jerk before I go into the next gear. Each gear offers its own experience and how it affects your ride and how it matches your mood. And if you want to pass someone, what maneuvers you want to make. And in a manual, just being able to pick the gear gives you a lot more control than an automatic. Because if I'm on a highway and we're maintaining speeds at 55 miles an hour and I'm comfortably in 5th gear, and again, if I press my gas really hard in 5th or 6th gear, I'm not going to all of a sudden gain a lot of speed, because at least not enough to outpace anyone to the left and the right of me if I want to change lanes or merge, because again, 5th gear is revving low compared to the speed that it's in. Because again, 5th gear is revving at the speed that's appropriate for it, but it doesn't require a lot of gas pedal. It's cruise. But if I was at that same 55 miles an hour and I drop it to 3rd gear, now a little blip of the throttle, a little gas, and my car will zoom forward and much faster in picking up speed than the cars next to me. So now if I needed to merge or change lanes, I can pick the right gear and have enough responsiveness and create enough distance to make the lane change. And I'll add one more thing, if I haven't flooded your brain with analogies already, and I hope you're drawing upon different ones yourself. I'll expound on the ones that are coming to me. And this other one that came to me that I'll add is that every time you switch gears, whether for a second, whether you realize it or not, you have to go through neutral, an area where no responsiveness, no gas pedals, no engine connections to the wheels at all. Neutral. This is a brief period you pass through where you are completely out of control. It just so happens to be so fast that you don't realize it. But if you got stuck there, and the fact that you have to go through there, all say a lot about life to me. So now my brain is a little weird. So maybe you didn't draw all the parallels that I have. Maybe you drew different ones. But here are some more that scream out to me. If I'm going in a certain direction, let's say I'm in reverse, I can't just go forward all of a sudden. I have to go through neutral. A middle ground. A place where everything rests for a second before it is ready to take direction again. Ready to take action and respond again. And a lot of times, before you can have positive momentum again, before you are connected to the wheels of life again, there's a period in which you are non-responsive. It's not positive or negative. It's neutral. It's non-negative, non-positive. It just is. And sometimes that's a place to pass through before you can match the conditions you desire ahead. Whether that's to continue to gain speed or slow down, there's a pause in the middle. And in life, that middle ground could feel much longer than the quick synaptic switching of a gear in a car or a bike. Another I can't help but think about is the need for first gear. Now, technically, my manual drivers know we can actually start from a dead stop in second gear. Just have to rev a little bit higher. But that's not the point. The second gear in that scenario is your first gear, and the point still stands. You have to go through a gear in which, in most scenarios, you don't ever really come back to, unless you completely slow down or stop. And in the regular course of a drive, you will slow down, but unless you're city driving or in a parking lot or a red light, you're not ever really slowing down enough to come back to first gear. It's really just your starting gear. Once you move past it, you usually don't need to come back to it. And it's usually the hardest one to master when you first start driving stick. It's where you are most likely to stall and stop. It's the least forgiving to not matching the clutch and the gas, that little dance that you have to do, that balancing. And if you give too much gas, you will screech your tires and jump forward and maybe burn out. But the rest of the gears are more forgiving. Even if your clutch and gas balancing isn't as good, the speed of the engine and other gears at that time will do most of the synchronization for you. But not when you're starting out. Not in first gear. That's where the skills really matter. Where the experience really shows. Where the flaws really present themselves. And we all need to start somewhere. And the way we start will affect a lot of how the rest of the gears will feel when they take over. And also, another thing that comes to me is that the first gear will only get you so far. You can only really maybe go to 25 miles an hour in first gear before your engine is ready to explode. After a certain speed, and really, after like 4 miles an hour and getting you rolling, unless you're really trying to drive aggressively off the line, there really is no need to be here. Just get rolling. Just enough skill to get rolling. Another one that I think about is the idea of over-revving and taxing the engine. Whether that's your bicycle or your car, when conditions change, when more speed is required, when you intend to continue going further, even just to keep up with the speed of those around you, you will need another gear to go to. Your current gear will not get you all the way there. You will need another gear. However you translate that, knowledge, skills, some level of expansion is required. And you will be restricted to certain roadways only, certain paths where you cannot travel, or it will be unsafe if you do not find this extra gear. The concept of lugging is the polar opposite of the over-revving problem, where in over-revving, your short, lower gear will only get you so far up to speed without taxing the engine, without additional gears or knowledge and expansion. Lugging is when your car's speed is much slower than the gear that you are in. You're in fifth gear, and everything around you is going at 10 miles an hour. Your car will struggle and make deep, ugly sound from the engine every time you try to hit the gas. And it will move very little, not be very responsive, feel like it's being suffocated. You're too advanced in gear for the speed that you're at. You need to upgrade your environment to match the speed that you've expanded into, or drop in gears to match the speed around you and make your way back to the road where you can regain the speed that you desire. And that will get you to where you are trying to go. I can keep riffing on this for another hour, but I think you get the idea. We are not unlike the machinery around us, all designed and designated for a specific purpose, with much discretion built in, much room to explore and attune to your style of drive. But the choice to gallop or crawl, that's all up to you and how you switch gears. I love you, family. Stay true always. I'll see you on the next show.